A day that was supposed to be the best of their lives turned horrible and gloomy. In front of all of their guests, the groom revealed his bride's hidden affair during the wedding ceremony. The startling discovery brought about an unanticipated and devastating conclusion. We pieced together the sequence of events that turned a day of love into a nightmare of treachery and tragedy in this true crime documentary. Please make sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment below if you enjoy reading about surprising turns of events that end tragically. We can tell more true crime stories thanks to your support. Lucy Stevens was raised in an affluent and highly anticipated environment. Being the sole child of a real estate tycoon, Lucy's early years consisted of a well-planned series of exclusive schools, riding classes, and debutante balls. She was taught the value of upholding a perfect public image at a young age, and this lesson would influence her decisions throughout her life. Lucy appeared to lead a fortunate life, but her home life was anything but perfect. Sincere emotional connection was rarely possible because of Theodore's strict personality and Evelyn's never-ending observation. Lucy took comfort in her intellectual endeavors, academic success, and the emergence of a strong interest in art history. She was accepted into an Ivy League university thanks to her intelligence and ambition, where she excelled academically but failed socially. She experienced turbulent relationships and a developing sense of detachment from her actual self as a result of the strain to uphold her family's reputation while attempting to define her own identity. But underneath her well-groomed facade, Lucy struggled with ingrained fears and a persistent need for approval. She frequently had passionate but brief relationships with men because she was more drawn to them who could give her the stimulation and attention she needed than to those who could provide her the stability she claimed to desire. Lucy first made the acquaintance of Finn Calloway at this time. She was drawn to him by his serene assurance and sincerity, and she saw in him the possibility of living the kind of life that society had always advised her to have. As their relationship developed, Lucy came to believe that Finn had the key to unlocking her inner potential and helping her to realize her true potential. However, ingrained behaviors are difficult to break, and as the wedding day drew near, Lucy struggled with uncertainty and an increasing feeling of restlessness. The facade she'd worked so hard to build was starting to show signs of weakness. In sharp contrast to Lucy's privileged upbringing, Finn Calloway's revealed the complicated and conflicted lady beneath. Being the child of a high school English teacher and a doctor from a small town, Finn was raised in a close-knit community that valued moral principles over worldly prosperity, such as diligence, honesty, and loyalty. Finn showed an innate talent for science from an early age, as well as an interest in the world around him. His curiosity was fostered by his parents, who pushed him to investigate and ask questions about everything. Camping trips and scientific museum visits throughout the summer months stoked Finn's developing interest in environmental preservation. Finn was brilliant academically, but he was also kind and well-liked by his peers. He was the kind of guy who would help out at the neighborhood animal shelter or instruct less fortunate peers. Throughout his life, he would be remembered for his sincere friendliness and moral rectitude. Because of his commitment to learning, Finn was awarded a scholarship to a prominent institution, where he studied environmental science. He got to know his cousin Asher Calloway for the first time around this period. Even though their origins were different, Asher was from the richer side of the family. The two grew close, with Finn frequently acting as a grounding force for his more impetuous cousin. Following graduation, Finn joined a non-profit organization that protects endangered species because he was passionate about conservation. He traveled to far-flung regions of the globe for employment. There he saw the wonders of nature as well as the catastrophic effects of human activities on delicate ecosystems. His determination to change things was only bolstered by these encounters. Finn had met Lucy Stevens at a fundraising function for his organization. Her beauty and brains impressed him instantly. However, it was her concealed frailty that won his heart. Lucy was someone that Finn knew he could give the kind of love and security to. With the growth of their connection, Finn thought he had found the one. Someone who could intellectually challenge him and who shared his ideals. He saw a future when they would go on trips together and have a same goal. It was an obvious proposal. Finn devoted all of his energy to arranging a future with the woman he adored. Finn had no idea that the trust he so dearly held would soon be put to the test, challenging not only his convictions but also his very identity. The odd man out in the family was Asher Calloway. One that he appeared to enjoy rather than begrudged. Asher was raised in an affluent Calloway family and had every luxury one could ask for, yet he lacked the mental stability he actually needed. His mother turned to social gatherings and prescription drugs for comfort, while his father, a successful business lawyer, was seldom around. When left on his own, Asher quickly became disobedient, taking use of his attractiveness and charisma to influence others and get away with increasingly dangerous actions. Asher had a difficult upbringing, but he was naturally charismatic and intelligent, which attracted many to him. When he put in the effort, he did well in school, but more often than not, he could be found leading his peers into mischief. He initially became close to his cousin Finn, who was visiting for the summer, during one of these incidents. A lasting impact was left by Finn's unwavering presence and sincere care for Asher's welfare. Asher felt appreciated and seen for who he was, not simply for his family name or his entertainment value, maybe for the first time. For Asher, this relationship with Finn turned into a lifeline. Among the few steady partnerships in his stormy existence. As they grew older, Asher's life took a very different turn than Finn's. While Finn followed his love for environmental science, Asher struggled to identify his true calling in college and switched around his majors frequently. Eventually, he found employment with a fledgling tech startup. More out of a genuine interest in the work than the lifestyle it provided. Asher had an equally disorganized personal life. He was skeptical of love after a series of unsuccessful relationships, but he persisted in looking for approval through conquering. He gained notoriety as a charming outlaw who shattered hearts in his wake. Something changed in Asher's world when Finn introduced him to Lucy. Here was a lady who matched him seemingly in depth and wit, who was also aware of the pressures of coming from a well-known family. Asher knew he should avoid the innocent flirtation that quickly turned into a hazardous attraction, but he was helpless to do so. As the wedding day drew nearer, Asher struggled to balance his developing feelings for Lucy with his commitment to Finn. He became more and more erratic in his behavior, and his sense of desperation contributed to the catastrophic events that would follow. This internal battle brought out the worst in him. The season's biggest social event was the engagement of Finn Calloway and Lucy Stevens. While on a conservation trip in Costa Rica, Finn had proposed to Lucy on a moonlit beach. He gave her an ethically sourced diamond ring that represented his principles and his love. Lucy had said yes without thinking, taken in by the romanticism of the moment and the prospect of a secure future. Their social networks rapidly became aware of their engagement. The Stevens were happy that their daughter had at last selected a worthy spouse, although finding Finn's commitment to non-profit work a little odd. Lucy was greeted warmly by the Calloways. Charmed by her grace and her seeming commitment to Finn. The couple's relationship began to show signs of strain as they got closer to planning their wedding. Lucy pushed for an extravagant celebration that would be the talk of the town, persuaded by her mother and years of social expectations. In keeping with his lowly background and concern for the environment, Finn argued in favor of a more private, smaller celebration. Finn frequently felt that his compromises were one-sided, as he unwillingly accepted a guest list that was larger than he felt comfortable and an extravagant venue. He explained these compromises away as loving gestures. Wanting Lucy's fantasy day to come true. Lucy became increasingly resentful of Finn because she saw his hesitation as a sign that he wasn't excited about their relationship. The closer the wedding date got, the couple suffered from the strain of planning. Lucy's temper became shorter and shorter, yelling at Finn about little things like the color of the tablecloths or the wine choices. Finn withdrew into his work, staying late at the office and abdicating most decision-making in an effort to maintain harmony. Asher started to take on a more significant role in their life during this turbulent period. He was always there to lend a shoulder or crack a joke to lighten the situation. He turned into a trusted confidant for Lucy and Finn. Appreciative of his cousin's encouragement, Finn overlooked the lingering looks between Asher and Lucy or the way their hands would caress one another for an excessive amount of time. Lucy started to look forward to seeing Asher. Savoring the thrill and uncertainty he introduced into her progressively more structured existence. She convinced herself that her developing feelings for Asher were just pre-wedding anxiety. A normal reaction to the strain of organizing an occasion of this magnitude. The tension between Finn and Lucy grew more intense as the wedding day drew near. Lucy broke down in tears after a furious fight over seating arrangements, and Finn stormed out of their flat. Asher was the one who arrived to console Lucy. He carried a costly champagne bottle and a listening ear. Something changed between Lucy and Asher that evening when she confided in him about her worries and fears. The distinction between comfort and desire became hazy, and in a moment of weakness, they kissed, starting a series of unfortunate occurrences. The following morning, Lucy, overcome with remorse but unable to suppress her passion, took a decision that would change everything. Before settling into married life, she told herself that what Finn didn't know wouldn't affect him and that she could enjoy one more taste of excitement. Little did she know that her neatly built world was going to crumble around her. Asher Calloway and Lucy Stevens' affair took off like a flare and swiftly devoured caution and reason. Clever looks and lingering touches quickly developed into secret gatherings and passionate experiences. They met for the first time while arranging their wedding. Lucy, well aware of her dubious motivations, had requested Asher to assist her in selecting a surprise gift for Finn. They first met in an exclusive hotel bar, the kind where questions were never asked and secrecy was assured. There was a noticeable spark between them as they sat close to one another, heads down over a catalog of timepieces. Lucy felt Asher's hand brush against hers, and all pretense vanished. They went silently to a room that Asher had held aside just in case. Later, while Lucy was lying in bed with an obliging Finn, the guilt hit. She assured herself that it was an isolated incident. A transgression that would never happen again, yet the rush of the forbidden was too strong to pass up. Asher and Lucy created a complex network of alibis and coded communications. A meeting at their hotel was indicated by a text regarding floral arrangements. A call regarding suit fittings announced they would be meeting at Asher's flat. Together, they mastered the art of moment stealing. A brief rendezvous in Lucy's workroom. A heated meeting while Asher's automobile was parked in a remote area. The thrill of potential discovery was heightened. They were so terrified and excited by some of the close calls that they were left speechless. At one family meal, Asher and Lucy had slipped into the coat closet for a passionate hug, and Finn was on the verge of discovering it. Another day, a friend of Lucy's saw them holding hands in a different townside cafe, so they had to come up with a complex lie about discussing surprise party plans for Finn. Their affair grew more intense as the wedding day approached. Lucy began equating Finn with Asher and felt her fiancé was constantly lacking. Where Finn was dependable, Asher was unpredictable and dangerous. She started to have doubts about her planned life and her relationship in general. As for Asher, well, he ended up plummeting farther than he had planned. What had begun as a victory and another medal in his collection had become into something more. He started to picture a future in which he and Lucy could be together in public. He willfully ignored the idea that this future would mean sacrificing his cousin's happiness. Asher and Lucy both suffered with guilt during quieter times. They were aware of the suffering and lives they would ruin if their acts were found out. But these worries were always forgotten in the midst of love. Overshadowed by the passion that drove them. The weeks went by, and they found it harder to distinguish between fact and fiction. They talked of a relationship that was doomed from the beginning and made promises to one another that they knew they couldn't keep. Meanwhile, Lucy and Finn's wedding date was drawing nearer and nearer, like a ticking time bomb that none of them knew how to stop. Finn Calloway had always taken great satisfaction in his ability to read people and circumstances with an intuitive sense. It was an ability that had come in handy for him in his conservation work, helping him to negotiate tricky situations and fragile habitats. But Finn became unusually naive to the treason that was simmering right beneath his nose. The initial signs of difficulty were faint and readily disregarded. Lucy's unusual fixation on her phone, her rapid call termination as Finn walked in the room, her heightened anger, which she related to the stress of the wedding, and the lingering smell of an unknown fragrance, which she associated with a new co-worker at the gallery. Finn's suspicions were ultimately aroused by Asher's actions. Normally very keen to participate in their life, his relatives started making up reasons to stay away from family get-togethers. When he finally showed there, he exuded nervousness and had a guilty expression on his face that changed every time he looked at Lucy. Finn attempted to dispel his misgivings by telling himself he was being overly suspicious, but the persistent feeling grew more intense every day. He started to listen more intently, observing the unspoken jokes that kept him out of Lucy and Asher's conversations. Unable to face his anxieties head-on, Finn started a haphazard investigation. He discovered that he was doing things he never would have imagined. When Lucy was taking a shower, checking her phone and looking over her credit card statements for unexplained charges, even driving by Asher's apartment at odd hours to see if Lucy's car was parked outside. Finn felt every fresh piece of evidence twisting inside him like a knife. A receipt from a hotel bar for 2 glasses of champagne. Lucy stated that she was working late one evening. Lucy deleted an Asher text message that said, "Missing you," from her phone. At a family supper, Asher's collar had a stain of lipstick. It complemented Lucy's shade. With the wedding day approaching, Finn discovered that he was caught in a vicious cycle of distrust and refusal. He yearned so much to trust in Lucy's love and the future they had together planned. But the evidence was mounting up and his suspicions were getting the better of him. Finn started acting out of his internal conflict. He grew aloof and preoccupied, frequently losing the focus of talks. Friends and family saw the shift. His profession, which had once been his passion, suddenly appeared pointless in the face of his emotional struggle. Blaming it on nervousness before the wedding, not realizing the storm was building underneath. 2 weeks prior to their nuptials, Finn's misgivings intensified. In an attempt to find a harmless explanation for the unsettling conduct he had witnessed, he made the decision to speak with Lucy. Finn and Lucy were in their shared apartment finishing up wedding plans when Finn struck up a serious talk. He asked her outright about her connection to his cousin Asher. With practiced poise, Lucy answered, his voice barely masking his internal anguish as she pretended to be innocent and discounted Finn's worries. Still, Finn sensed faint hints of unease from her as he laid out his case. Clever glances, mysterious phone calls, and inexplicable absences. Finn persisted, citing certain instances that had raised his suspicions in spite of Lucy's denials. Lucy's answers got increasingly detailed and combative, stating that Finn was exaggerating because of the stress of the wedding. She asked why she would put their relationship in danger while reiterating how much she loved him. As the argument grew more heated, Lucy recommended giving Asher a call to confirm her accounts. Finn noticed her trepidation as she picked up the phone and put it on speaker. Asher's voice dominated the room, slickly supporting Lucy's allegations and offering justifications for each dubious event that Finn brought up. Finn was exhausted and demoralized by Lucy and Asher's united front. His anxieties and suspicions were only heightened by their expert coordination in refuting his charges. Lucy tried to patch things up by the end of the talk, explaining Finn's worries away as stress from the wedding. She begged him to concentrate on their impending marriage. Unable to express his emotions, Finn could only nod and reply. Upon meeting Lucy's gaze, Finn came to the realization that everything had changed. The future he had imagined started to fall apart because the trust that had once served as the cornerstone of their relationship had been irreversibly broken. Bright and clear, the morning of the wedding was ideal for a celebration of love. But the mood was anything but festive in the estate's opulent bridal suite at Rosewood Hills. Lucy occupied the elaborate vanity. Her mirror, pale and wan despite the skillfully placed cosmetics, glared back at her as her bridesmaids fussed over her hair and makeup. She struggled to breathe in her elaborately beaded gown as the weight of her deceit crushed down on her. Finn remained still across the estate in the smaller room meant for the groom's party. His expression was a mask of composure that revealed nothing of the internal struggle. It felt obvious and terrible, the choice he had taken in the early morning. With a beseeching grin that stopped short of his eyes, Asher entered the room late. Observing his cousin in the mirror, Finn noticed the anxious energy emanating from him. After a brief period of holding each other's stare, Asher swiftly averted his eyes, unable to keep Finn's unwavering gaze. Tension in both rooms increased as the hours passed and the ritual got closer. Lucy started to hold back her emotions. Finn's hands trembled as he put his grandmother's watch on his wrist, a family relic he'd once dreamed of giving to his and Lucy's son, ruining her neatly applied mascara. Guests arrived outside, blissfully oblivious, their eager conversation and laughing filling the air. The string quartet began to perform. The subdued melody stands in sharp contrast to the emotional pandemonium transpiring in private. Trembling with anticipation and a hint of fear, 3 hearts raced as the wedding planner's voice called out to them through the door. The time for honesty has come. A floral wonderland had been created in Rosewood Hills' great ballroom. Every surface was covered with beautiful baby's breath and garlands of white flowers. The air filled with their lovely aroma. The floor-to-ceiling windows let in a plenty of sunlight, which warmed the group of people. With the music growing louder, everyone's gaze went to the rear of the room. Finn watched the bridal party walk down the aisle while he stood at the altar, his face hidden behind an inscrutable mask. Asher, the best man standing next to him, shuffled nervously. His gaze flitting from Finn to the doorway. The bridal march then started, and Lucy emerged through the doorway. There was a collective gasp among the audience. In white, she was a vision. She was her lace and silk creation of a gown seemed to float around her as she walked. However, her closest companions noticed the tension on her face and the small shake in her hands as she held her bouquet. Lucy smoothly walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her eyes locked with Finn's. They exchanged a quiet message at that very moment. Finn noticed the remorse and terror in Lucy's eyes, while her blood ran cold when she noticed a coldness in his eyes. The couple barely noticed the words said by the officiant as the ceremony got underway. Lucy responded instinctively, speaking hardly audibly above a whisper. Though they lacked the warmth and affection one might anticipate on such an occasion, Finn's were strong and clear. There was an obvious sense of tension in the room as they approached the pledge exchange. Attendees moved in their chairs, detecting a hint of uneasiness that the couple was giving out. Asher tensed up, his face a little paler than usual, as though he could feel the calamity coming. The celebrant remarked, "Finn, you may now say your vows to Lucy." Finn inhaled deeply. His gaze flickered over the throng before returning to Lucy. His voice was calm and clear, caring for every part of the silent room when he talked. "Lucy, I stand here now to declare a truth that will not go unspoken, not to recite vows of love and fidelity." His remarks caused the guests to become rather perplexed. Lucy recognized what was about to happen, and her eyes widened in terror. "I've had suspicions for weeks now that the woman I believe to be my lifelong friend and partner has been deceiving me about her true identity." Finn's voice became louder, the anguish feeding it. "And not just any lie, rather, one that strikes at the core of family and trust." As Finn went on, the crowd erupted in gasps and whispers. He then turned to face Asher, who had turned a sickly white. "You and my cousin have been involved in an affair, Lucy. My best man is the one I asked to stand by me." There was an unbearable silence for a while. With a gentle thud on the floor, Lucy's bouquet fell from her fingers as she stood motionless. Asher retreated a step, as though attempting to dissociate himself from Finn's charges. Finn remarked, his voice cracking a little, "I have proof. Hotel receipts, text messages, and emails. You two were hiding about as we were making plans for the future. Betraying everyone in attendance who came to celebrate our love, not just me." Chaos broke out in the room. Lucy's father got up, his face crimson with anger, and her mother let out a howl of sorrow. Sitting in stunned silence, Finn's parents' gaze alternated between their nephew and their son. Lucy emerged from the pandemonium following Finn's confession and regained her voice. She begged Finn to listen. Trying to clarify the matter, he insisted that his interpretation was off. But Finn was past listening to her, he had reached his breaking point. Finn turned to face the stunned visitors and expressed his regret for the fictitious circumstances that had led to their gathering. His announcement of the wedding's postponement reverberated through the venue's shocked quiet. After making this proclamation, he left the altar and started walking back down the aisle by himself. Finn hesitated a moment as he walked past Asher. He spoke with a voice full of hurt and treachery, expressing how disappointed he was. Highlighting the fraternal connection he had thought they had. With stunned stillness, the gathered guests watched as Finn headed for the door. But before he could get to the doors, everyone's attention was diverted by a disturbance close to the altar. A new drama was emerging at the center of what should have been a joyous celebration, and all eyes shifted back to where Lucy and Asher stood. Asher's hand moved to the inside of his jacket in the middle of being electrocuted. He produced a small, sparkling object that appeared to be a concealed weapon, and time seemed to stop. Lucy was the first to realize that things were getting dangerous as they intensified. Her face twisted with terror and streaked with mascara, she yelled out Asher's name in concern. Her shriek separated the confusion and caught everyone's eye. The gathered guests turned to find Asher brandishing a rifle while clearly trembling. Lucy's cries alerted Finn, and he turned back to confront this new menace. His look of complete bewilderment upon seeing his cousin with a gun was apparent. The venue instantly descended into panic. As people huddled behind chairs or hurried for the exits, others scurried for safety. As they ran, the string quartet dropped their instruments, which clanked to the floor. Finn spoke to Asher in a steady voice, stunning him with his composure in the face of pandemonium. He made an effort to talk sense into his cousin's head, asking him to change his mind, and lower Asher seemed beyond reason, his eyes crazed and unfocused as he yelled about lost bliss and plans gone awry. With her wedding gown now rumpled, Lucy walked warily toward Asher. With trembling voice, she begged him, attempting to persuade him that using violence wasn't the answer. For a little while, he said, Asher's resolve stiffened again, yet it seemed her words may reach him. When Asher said there was no going back, the tension reached a breaking point. He gripped the trigger tighter in a whirl of movement. Lucy attempted to disarm him by lunging forward, and Finn hurriedly ran towards them to shield Lucy from harm. The scenario came to a terrifying climax as the ballroom echoed with the thunderous sound of a gunshot. Leaving everyone stunned and unsure of the identity of the victim, if any. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the air, and then there was a short, icy silence. Then the scene exploded into turmoil again, as if freed from a spell. Lucy fell to the floor, her immaculate white bridal dress rapidly leaking a startling amount of scarlet. With a horrifying turn of circumstances, Finn forgot his fury and went to her side. He held her tenderly in his arms. The enormity of the circumstance overpowering him. In the meantime, the weapon slipped out of Asher's hand and fell to the ground with a clatter. He stood there stunned. He had a look of utter shock and astonishment. As though he couldn't comprehend the ramifications of his deeds. Finn made a valiant attempt to stop Lucy's chest wound from bleeding. His voice breaking as he begged her to continue being awake. His mad determination to preserve her life had taken the place of his previous feelings of betrayal. With considerable effort, Lucy's eyes fluttered open as she tried to focus on Finn. She tried to apologize in a barely discernible whisper. A cough that sent a drop of blood to her lips cut short her speech. As she struggled to voice her regret, the seriousness of her condition became brutally evident and the air was thick with words left unsaid. And the doubt about her destiny. Pandemonium was prevailing around them. Those with medical training among the guests hurried forward to assist, while others dialed 911. As Asher stood there, unmoving, as Finn's dad and another visitor held him down. The ambulance took a long time to arrive. While holding Lucy, Finn tried to keep her conscious by stroking her with words of support and forgiveness. But every minute that went by, her breathing became more difficult and her replies grew weaker. It was too late by the time the paramedics showed up. Lucy Stevens' life was abruptly ended in the same location where she was meant to start a new chapter, despite their best efforts. She was declared dead at the spot. Rosewood Hills felt the full brunt of the tragedy when the police arrived and started to handle the situation. What ought to have been a happy and festive day had turned into a nightmare that would follow everyone in attendance for years to come. The lives of everyone engaged at Rosewood Hills were forever altered in the months that followed the horrific events. After being found guilty of second-degree murder and given a life sentence, Asher Calloway's once promising future was destroyed by a fit of jealous wrath. Grieving and feeling guilty, Finn Calloway quit his job in the country to find comfort in the isolated wilderness areas he had previously fought to defend.